Steven sees a figure crawling in the night. Liza's eyes adjust.
Hey, welcome back, Pinheads. In recent news, probably by the time you see this, has been a little bit of old news, but still recent to me. Ozzy Osbourne has passed away. Now, you're probably like, why is that relevant? Well, that's relevant because Steve and I were talking about Ozzy Osbourne, and one day I think Steve called me up and we were talking about Ozzy, and he was like, I was listening to Mr. Crowley, and what an interesting song. So I was kind of looking into the guy, and what an interesting guy, and I was like, yeah, he is a pretty interesting guy. So I think we decided that we're going to go ahead and talk about Mr. Crowley, who is I've always referred. Now, here's the first thing about Mr. Crowley, if you will. I've always known this man as Aleister Crowley. Now, when you research this guy, which I did, because even though I knew some things about him, I didn't know everything about him, and I kind of like to, look these things up and, kind of see if there's anything I might not have known. But this guy is called everything from Aleister Crowley, like I call him, to like Aleister Crowley. I mean, it's pretty interesting how, I don't feel like it's that complicated of a name, but it's definitely pronounced differently by different people.
Crowley, which means Aleister Crowley.
Aleister Crowley.
Aleister Crowley.
Aleister Crowley.
Edward, that's it. So he was actually born Edward, and
Edward Alexander
changed his name to Aleister when he went off to college. So in a way to kind of transform himself a little bit. But there's a lot of meat on this bone with this guy, and like you said, based upon how we kind of came to the conclusion that, hey, let's talk about him. It's a name I've heard before, but I never really looked into much. But around the music industry, especially metal and rock and roll, and several years past, I mean, the Black Sabbath days, the Ozzy solo artist time, like when he wrote that song, Mr. Crowley, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles. So many different musicians and musical entities were fascinated by this guy. And so I thought that was really kind of cool. And we'll kind of touch in on that here and there as we go. But that was correct. We were talking about Ozzy, unfortunately passing as he did, and how iconic of a just a metal icon he was. I mean, for my money, Black Sabbath is the beginning of metal.
Very, very talented man. I've seen him actually in concert more than anybody else, and that was probably about literally 17 times I've seen Ozzy Osbourne in concert. He's just one of those guys that even if he got wheeled up to the stage in a wheelchair, he'd still get up and give everything he had to that performance. And I mean, that is just, he was a phenomenal, phenomenal performer in that way.
If there's ever been a music icon, let's put it that way, that has walked kind of a razor's edge of duality, dark and light, good and evil, being a believer in God, or having opinions on both sides of the fence, and be able to walk into a room with left-minded individuals and right-minded individuals and bring them all together. I think he was that person. And it was evident in a lot of his music and the times that I'd ever seen him doing either his shows like the Osbournes or whatever else. So it was interesting to always hear what he had to say, and definitely influential in my life, especially musically. You can see I got a couple albums in the back, and I think what I'm going to do, even though this is a horror show, I do want to put every so often a couple of new albums up, and you guys watching, you can talk about them, say, put a little note that, hey, Iron Maiden sucks, or Black Sabbath rules, or whatever else, and maybe we can draw a little bit of response from that as well. But as you can see, I got the first Black Sabbath album up there, and one of my favorites. So although Mr. Crowley is a solo gig from Ozzy, but When we talk about Ozzy having that walk, the razor's edge of both dark and light, let's get to Aleister Crowley, because he was a person that in a lot of ways did the same type of thing. He was beloved and hated almost in the same time from very similar people. People would love him one moment and hate him the next. So
Well, I wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about Mr. Crowley, if you don't mind.
sure.
I thought that this was an extremely I'd heard this song many times in my life. I know the lyrics to it. I sing along to it. I turn it up when it's on. And it's funny because when I actually sat here and was like, okay, what does this song actually mean? Let me look into that a little bit here. I think it's really interesting because I think there's a lot of different opinions about this. And when I say that, it's that when you listen to the lyrics, so basically kind of what I read up on is that Ozzy wrote this song basically because everybody was kind of talking about this guy at the time. It was Jimmy Page just bought Aleister Crowley's house. He was just kind of a pop icon, if you will, sort of at the time. And so Ozzy wrote a song about him. And it's really interesting to me because people automatically associated the fact that he wrote a song about this guy as Ozzy as a Satanist. And we'll get into why people would believe that once we talk about Mr. Crowley. But they were like, Ozzy is a Satanist because he wrote this song. Christians were attacking him over this song, like everything is, even these days. I mean, there's always a group attacking somebody over anything they say or do. Mm-hmm. And it was happening back then. And I literally have a quote from Ozzy that says, I never did this black magic stuff. The reason I did Mr. Crowley on my first solo album, Blizzard of Oz in 1980, was that everybody was talking about Aleister Crowley. Jimmy Page bought his house, and one of my roadies worked with one of his roadies. I thought, Mr. Crowley, who are you? Where are you from? But people would hear the song and go, he's definitely into witchcraft. And that is a quote from Ozzy. And I thought that it was really interesting because when you look at the lyrics to this song, I feel like, first of all, I don't get, and I don't know, and I don't want to sit here and put words in Ozzy's mouth. I say what somebody means when they write something, of course, but when I read this, I almost see it more as a sarcasm, if you will. And we all know Ozzy was the Prince of friggin' Darkness. So, I mean, honestly, in my opinion, and I'll get to more of my opinion about Mr. Crowley as we go, or Aleister Crowley. Sorry, I think I'm going to call him Mr. Crowley just because of this song. I mean, that's just what's on my mind. But, Mr. Crowley, what went on in your head? Oh, Mr. Crowley, did you talk to the dead? I mean, it to me, it almost reads like Ozzy kind of thinks the guy's almost a little funny, like he's like, oh, you were into magic and blah, blah, blah. It refers to drugs and that kind of stuff. And, won't you ride my white horse? Mr. Crowley, it's symbolic, of course, we're talking about cocaine there, I'm assuming. And I don't know. I think that people took that way too seriously. I think Ozzy was more just like, hey, who is this guy? And some of it was kind of sarcastic and kind of funny and maybe even like a little bit of a jab. That was my interpretation.
The last couple of lines of it, and I hope I get the term correct. I think it's called polemic, or he says, was it polemically sent? I want to know what you meant. And in essence, his life in general, what were you doing? Was this to put yourself up on a pedestal? Was it to bring other people together, like-minded individuals? Were you trying to become a god in your own right? And a little bit of all of that is true based on what I've researched about this guy. He was all over the place, and a lot of his practices were far out and way out of what my belief system would be. But you made a good point the other day when we were talking too, that a lot of the stuff that he believed in is in a lot of ways, a good thing too. So I don't know how far you would want to take that, but with his practices and things. But he was very much all the way one side and all the way the other at one point in time in his life.
Yeah, and I definitely think that's interesting, and I very much so have strong opinions kind of at the end of this whole thing about that and about wrapping him up as a whole person. And I So a little bit about this because we kind of like to know a little bit where people are from. Like you said, he was born Edward Alexander Crowley in 1875. I mean, that's a long time ago.
Mhm.
To a evangelical Christian family. His father was a holy man. His father was all about self-control, and Aleister Crowley, or at that time Edward Crowley, he did not have a lot of friends. He actually would spend most of his time inside, studying the Bible, that kind of thing. My understanding about him is that after his father passed away and he was being watched by his mother, he became sickly. There were some issues, and he moved in with his uncle. And his
Yes.
uncle was a fantastic man. And I say that in the
By what? Buying him prostitutes and alcohol? Then yes,
yeah,
he's.
letting him drink underage, and he bought him a prostitute so that he could lose his virginity to a prostitute.
But
What?
15 back in the 1800s, that's probably what today's 30. So
Yeah, well, I
it's
mean, you're
not that big a
15
deal,
back then, man. It's incredible that he didn't already have a career, or but
right?
you only lived to be well. I mean, I guess they did live a long time back then. I mean, he lived a pretty full life, but it's
72 years, it's not too bad.
I mean, people were
But
getting married at like 14 back then, so it's really not. But anyway, after that, he started rebelling a lot towards his upbringing, and I think that this is really, and that I brought this up is that I think this is really the turning point. I think that he was so repressed by his father, his upbringing, that when he met his uncle and kind of had this taste of freedom, I feel like it was like an overcorrection is what I would almost call it in this situation. I feel like he just was just balls to the walls. Like, I've never had this much fun. I've never felt this much physical joy or excitement before. And I feel like he just went completely the other way at that point in time.
well,
Um,
there's just like with anybody. Hell, I used to watch Criminal Minds and things like that. They talk about what was the trigger. Did the guy's dad die recently, or spouse, or what made the person go off the deep end, or do whatever they're doing? And I think it's important to note in the beginning that their family was a very wealthy one, which made it even more difficult for him to follow the teachings of his father about anything in excess. It doesn't matter what it is the devil's work. It's wrong. And so when his dad died when he was 11 of surprisingly tongue cancer, being a holy man, if you will, uh,
that is
him
interesting.
passing along, that's kind of strange that he would get that. But at that point in time, the doctors had stated that young Edward at the time was very sickly, and up to that point had been very devout, I guess I should say, to his dad's belief system, and had followed that Christianity to a degree where he couldn't do anything outside of the straight and narrow. And so, like you said, spending time with his uncle, whom, by the way, being told by doctors he was going to die soon anyway, probably every day was Disneyland type of time with him. So they did a lot and experienced a lot. And then when he
It
was,
was like the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I want a prostitute.
no kidding. And so after surprisingly going off and being with his uncle, staying out in a an area that was I don't recall exactly where they were, but I know it was kind of like out in the countryside. He also really enjoyed mountain climbing, which comes into play later on, and just being outdoors and doing those sorts of things. So he experienced virtually everything in just a few short years' time, to the point where once he became healthy again, he went to go back to live with his mother, and his mother did not recognize her son anymore. So I'll let you kind
I
of
don't
take it from
even know
there.
you anymore.
Yeah, she labeled him the Beast.
The Beast. Yeah, and that's when he was on his path. So he actually became an educated man. He studied at Trinity College in Cambridge, and he did end up leaving without a degree, but he was focusing on his poetry and mountaineering at that point in time. This guy is considered kind of a jack of all trades in that sense, that he was, artist. Some even claim for him to be kind of a musician, philosopher, of course, and you know, definitely a poet and a writer. He was the author of a few books, and he did end up around that time. So, getting into a little bit of his occult stuff here, he did end up joining the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn.
Dawn, yeah.
And you know who else was a member of that?
I do.
Well, are we thinking of the same person?
I believe so. He made this movie that was really popular.
Well, I think he wrote the book that the movie was based on.
Well, that's true. Yes, yeah, for sure.
I don't think he made the movie. There wasn't a whole lot going on in the movie industry in 1875.
That's true. That's true.
Well, after 1875, because he was born in 1875. But you know what I mean. But anyway, without leaving you guys in the dark too much, Bram Stoker was also a part of this Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. That all happened around 1898. So I was saying 1875 because that's when he was born. But it was 1898. And that's where he was learning his ceremonial magic. He traveled extensively, studied various occult traditions, spiritual practices. In 1904 in Cairo, he claimed to have received the Book of the Law, dictating the principles of Thelema, which Thelema is his own belief system that he basically created when he broke off from the Order of the Golden Dawn. And I mean, really what we're talking about here is, I mean, I've seen so many movies, documentaries about cult leaders. And you know what? Aleister Crowley almost never comes up, but this guy was probably one of the big dogs, you know? I mean,
he was as influential as anybody of that time, for sure. And when you talk about the Order of the Golden Dawn and everything, the funny thing is he was still on the fence about who he was, about his reputation, about the man he was perceived to be. And so he went in with an alias and a fake mustache, facial hair.
Yeah, I heard about the fake mustache, and that was pretty comical.
He went in like Vladimir or something or other, and with a fake accent.
He beat me, straight up. Pay that man his money.
And he had a
bad Russian accent.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty funny. And a lot of the people within that order were into the magical side of things, but Aleister was exploring the darker side of that magic. And I forget if it was prior to that or shortly after that he got married to a woman virtually that he had just met. She was engaged to be married.
And he's stopping her from an arranged wedding.
There you go.
Before we go too far with that, I did want to also add a really interesting kind of funny fact to this is that I think that there was a lot of bullshit involved with Aleister Crowley, and I'm going to call that. But one thing I want to say before we got too far talking about his sexual history and everything is that when he moved back in with his mother, he did sleep with his maid in his mother's bed. To piss off his mother, basically, is what it came down to. He claimed later that that woman, who actually ended up losing her job and her reputation at the time, ended up becoming a prostitute, that's fantastic. You know, I mean, you're like a maid, and then basically the master of the house sleeps with you, and then as in return, you get your entire reputation ruined. So now you have to become a prostitute. Like that is like a timeline that blows my mind a little bit. I just need to say that. Like that's really interesting.
And then to go out the way that she allegedly did too, which I'm sure you'll get to.
And that's just it, is that Aleister Crowley claimed that not only was she Jack the Ripper's first victim, but also that he knew Jack the Ripper and that Jack the Ripper was an occultist. Now, throughout this, I'm going to call bullshit on a couple things, and this is one of them, only because if this guy had anything to do with or knew Jack the Ripper, I mean, I feel like that case would have been solved. I'm just saying, like, I feel like there would have been more to it. I feel like that's literally like, I get famous and I want to name drop and I want people to think I'm cool. So I'm like, oh, I hung out with Metallica. Right. You know, I mean, it's like, I feel like that's what that was, because if he didn't know the guy, I feel like somebody would have found something out. I mean, especially the way this guy talked. He didn't have a problem, running his mouth, especially, I would assume when he gets on drugs and everything. So, I mean, I don't believe that at all. But we can continue from there. I just wanted to call out bullshit on a couple of things that I thought of when I was going through all of this. Mm-hmm. So if you want to go ahead and continue, he met his wife and married her to stop the arranged marriage. Right.
And there were times that he actually was what would be believed as being honest in some of his statements as well. So, and I'll get to that, but allegedly knowing Jack the Ripper and all that stuff, who knows? This guy could have been an habitual liar. He, for the sake of doing and saying whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, as his mantra. Who knows what's truth and what's not? A lot of things akin to the Warrens and stuff. But when he met this woman, he had just purchased, I believe, he had just purchased that place in Loch Ness that Jimmy Page ended up buying later on and then selling, stating that it was haunted and that he had potentially opened up some portal there or whatever. But he had also made it known that through all of his practices up to that point, that he had never had any experience, true experience, to where he has ever seen anything or felt anything. And so when he did this magical thing with his wife in Cairo, she had claimed that during this seance that he was doing, that she had seen one of the Egyptian gods, Horus, I think is what it was. And yeah, and that he was pissed that she had seen him, kind of called her bluff and said, bullshit, I've never had anything like this happen to me, and I've been doing this forever. And here you are on day one, and you're claiming that you see something. So he took her to an area that had, I forget which museum it was in Egypt, but it had a ton of different, I guess, what would be the right word for it?
Artifacts?
Yeah, we could call them artifacts or just, it was a museum for the most part. And he said, it had stuff. And he said, look, if this is who you saw and this is what you heard, then why don't you go show me who they are or what it was. And so she goes right up to his Horus's, I guess, I don't know what the hell it would be.
I love it. It's like an old Egyptian mugshot, hey, show me the person that did this to you kind of thing.
Exactly. Who was it? And she walks right up and points to Horus, surprisingly.
Lineup. That's what I'm looking at. He put up the Egyptian lineup.
There you go.
Which one was it?
So once again, who knows how much truth there was to that either, but that's the lore behind it, the story behind it, that she had experienced that and backed it up by pointing him out in a mugshot.
And it's funny too, because like you said, I mean, he really did kind of have such an ego that I'm sure it just pissed him off that, she had some experience that he didn't, he was kind of an egomaniac. I got that from my kind of studies on all of this. And I don't think we really touched on it yet, but basically what it comes down to is, we kind of said he broke away when he was younger, with his experience with his uncle and stuff. And this Thelema, basically what this was all about was emphasizing individual will and the pursuit of one's true will, which basically all boils down to, if I had to put this in layman's terms, it was all about indulgence. It was all about, being selfish. And this is kind of where I want to say, like, I felt it took me a lot of years to realize this, but I actually felt like I could relate a little bit to his theories with the whole Thelema thing, because I do think that a lot of times we hold ourselves back by thinking about others too much. And I'm not saying that you need to be a piece of shit. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that I do feel like if you want to be successful in life, if you do want to follow your true pursuit, sometimes you do need to put yourself first. And I do agree with that. And I know that his was to much more of an extreme than I'm talking about, but I do agree with the fact that, I think that a lot of us really hold ourselves back because of what other people would think of us, or because we might be, hurting other people in one way or another, even if it's just their feelings or their opinions. And these are people essentially in our lives that don't really matter. And we just take into consideration all of these other sources when it's just like, it's not the best thing for you. And I'm sure a lot of people have wasted their lives because of those things. So I will say I kind of, to some degree, sort of, I'm in agreement as some of the beginning of this whole thing, I guess, is where I'm saying.
I mean, there are several aspects of his belief system that is what made him so polarizing to so many artists and musicians and things. And so, and because of that, like you said, there are certain aspects of his way of thinking that does make sense. And although he took virtually everything he did to the nth degree, and sometimes ended up toppling the whole thing down for that sake because he didn't know how to quit or when to stop. But,
Well, essentially, we had another perfect storm here, as I refer to some things that we discussed. Like, I mean, this guy had the means, dude. He inherited a fortune, so he had the means to just basically be a whack job. He didn't have to focus on putting food on the table. He didn't have to focus on, you know, how he's going to pay his next bill or how he's going to pay rent. I mean, and that's the thing is when you have somebody that is kind of already set up for a little bit of disaster with being as strictly, you know, brought up as he was, and then to have the experiences with his uncle and then he inherits his fortune. I mean, you're kind of, I would almost be shocked if we didn't end up with something kind of crazy from that scenario, you know?
oh, for sure. Well, up to that point, and through that point and beyond, the one thing that remained was his lust for women. I mean, he was an adulterer on all fronts, and whether he was married or in a relationship or otherwise, he was constantly with other women. In some cases,
men, right?
With men.
With men.
In fact,
bisexual.
To backtrack a bit, back when he was in college, there was a guy there that would dress and drag, kind of in the closet, so to speak. Not too many people knew about that, and he would write like dirty poems to him and stuff, and they had a little bit of a fling. What's that?
That's so sexy. That's hot.
Yeah, no kidding. But yeah, he was known for his sensually dark poetry as well. So I mean, the guy wrote a lot of different things, but the one mainstay throughout was his for women. And at some point in time, there were, and I forget what that, because he did so many different things. It's hard to remember right off the top of my head, but I know there was another collective group that he got together with, where they were practicing sex magic. They were practicing that thelema or whatever you call it there, with doing virtually whatever you want, whenever you want. And it also involved bestiality and offering up animal sacrifices and all sorts of stuff. And I think, if I remember correctly, it ended when one of the people that were there had drank like cat's blood and had died or something, and they broke that up and moved along to the next thing. But
it's always a great idea until somebody dies from drinking cat's blood.
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, that was probably really a big downer, man. I'm sure that really ruined the party vibe.
I can imagine. Yeah, you never want to anybody to die, but definitely by drinking cat's blood, that makes it even worse. So,
like, it's like, oh man, look at Jeff over there. He's going to town on that hog, and you know, the orgy's happening over here. But shit, Susan died from cat's blood. I guess we got to pack it up.
Yeah, that's, I don't know. I mean, the guy ended up with tons of different sexually transmitted diseases, as you can imagine.
Oh,
And
no.
also had, by the point in time, acquired quite a taste for virtually anything he could get, as far as narcotics were concerned. His belief system was that anything that he was trying to do would be enhanced, of course, with whatever drug he was taking. And so he really got hung up into the drugs. And as he continued to buy properties and try new ventures and spend his money on alcohol and drugs and women and everything else, at one point in time, his money ran out. And that was a sad day for him. But
well, also, I believe that he ended up facing legal battles and was declared bankrupt after a libel suit. So that kind of took care of what he had left there. But he definitely had all kinds of illness. It'd be argued mental illness and, you know, of course, drug addiction. He created his own tarot deck, which was I thought that was kind of cool. And so kind of to since we discussed this guy a little bit here, I did want to talk a little bit about his influence and things before I go ahead and kind of give my overall sort of point of view on this guy. But he did a bunch of, well, he is responsible for being the inspiration for quite a few films. And some of the most well listed ones, I'm not even gonna lie, man, I've never even heard of them. I don't even know some of these films. And that's Chemical Wedding, Aleister Crowley, Legend of the Beast, The Magician, Dark Song, Curse of the Demon, one called Aleister. There's let's see here. We have The Red Lips of the Octopus by Dawn, which was a short, Nud Rising, The Devil's Hand, and Conjuring the Book of the Dead, but not the Conjuring that we know. It's a different Conjuring, Conjuring the Book of the Dead. And I got to tell you, one thing that I know as an avid movie watcher and cinephile is that I did look up that movie because at first I was like, hold up, The Conjuring, like what is this? And the main actor, the headliner in that movie is Tom Sizemore.
No kidding.
Now, the thing about Tom Sizemore, and there's a lot of actors like this, but I'm going to specifically pick on Tom Sizemore for a second, is that the guy is not a bad actor when he's on screen with other people, but he's one of those actors that if he's headlining, chances are it's a terrible movie. If he's the guy, if that's the draw to the movie, chances are it's not going to be great. It's like certain actors like that, man. I mean, I'm not saying he's a bad actor. I mean, he's fine in my opinion as a supporting role, but I've never seen the guy in a major role where I wasn't like, this kind of sucks. Right.
But I also think most of those movies you've listed off, because I watched a few moments on YouTube of a handful of them. I think B movie would be going overboard. I mean, more like a C- movie when it comes to the amount of money that they had to do it, and in a lot of ways it felt kind of like a high school play, the way they set things up. So, but the one thing I did want to mention
it's funny though. Sorry, before you move on, it's funny though because I would think a guy like him and a lot of the movies we've seen, I would think that there would be a couple of huge motion pictures about this guy being the influence he was and kind of the person he was. I mean, because realistically, I feel like this guy is more interesting. And even though, yeah, he didn't have the murders, which I guess is why, some of these people beat him, but I would say his philosophy and his followings and the things that he did were just as interesting to learn about or just as interesting to see as like Jim Jones or Charles Manson. But I guess because they were wrapped up with the, murder side and the murders, I mean, I guess that's why they, kind of became such a hot topic for everybody. But you don't really hear about Aleister Crowley as much as them. But I mean, realistically, the backstory, the philosophy, I think it's maybe even more interesting to me.
Right. Well, and a lot of the people that you do hear about now were potentially influenced by him. For example, like L. Ron Hubbard and some of the other, like with Scientology and some of the other things that have come down the pike. So yes, he polarizing guy, but let's not forget this is 150 years ago when this guy was born. And so if you don't have a body count or anything insanely memorable, that he's just another guy that kind of just faded off into the ether over the years. Albeit a lot of, like I stated before, I mean, you got John Lennon was a huge fan. Put him on the cover of one of his albums with the Beatles and everything.
Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
That's it. He's up in the top left corner if you're looking at it.
I don't know why, but they referred to this in some of the things that I was reading about him, that he had his own musical contributions. He basically had a partner who was Lila Waddell, and she played the violin, and she would basically follow him around during his rituals and play classical music such as Bach, Vivaldi, Beethoven, Mozart, Wagner, and Debussy. I don't know why that would be his own influence, because it sounded like he just had somebody that followed him around and played other people's music while he did his weird shit. I don't know.
A wandering
there.
minstrel.
Yeah, that's what it kind of sounds like, which I think would be awesome, man. And I think he wasted a valuable asset there. And I'll tell you why. If I was charismatic enough that I had, like, I was involved in cults and people wanted to be around me, and I had some talented, super talented woman who was like, I play the violin. I'd be happy to travel with you and play the violin. The first thing I'd have that woman do, if I'm an egomaniac, like, cult leader, is I'm getting a theme song. Like, I would straight up, like, write me a theme song. Like, when I walk into a building, I need this shit playing. Because how cool would that be, man? I mean, I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel like it'd be really fun to kind of go through your life with a soundtrack. And how cool would it be to have your own, you know, like when Vader comes on the ship or whatever, it's like, you know, it's Vader. That's that dun 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 dun. Like, hey, where's Jake? I hear his song playing. Oh, there he is. You know, it'd be kind of, I don't know, I think it'd be fun.
Well, who's to say that he didn't? I mean, maybe she did have a little soundtrack to his life.
I mean, I've never heard it, but I mean, I haven't also heard everything that they've done or anything like that. But I mean, who knows? It'd be great. I mean, that's what I would do. So, also some other influences on this, of course, are the whole Mr. Crowley, which we already discussed. We already discussed kind of Jimmy Page was a Crowley admirer, and he incorporated Crowley's philosophy and imagery into the band's music and stage presence. You already talked about the Beatles, including Crowley on the cover, but a couple ones that we didn't really mention here are the Doors. Jim Morrison was known to be a follower of Thelema and Crowley's teachings, which is evident in the band's lyrics, and also, I would say, very evident in the way that Jim Morrison himself conducted himself in his life. Jim Morrison was also a very indulgent person with the ladies and the drugs. I love Jim Morrison, by the way. I mean, he's one of those, the Doors isn't really something I pick up all the time, but when I do pick it up, like, I love it. I'm so into it when I do pick it up. But Crowley believed that music, like magic, was a powerful, experiential medium. He stated that soul test of music is its power to exalt the soul. So that's part of his philosophy. His philosophy had a lot to do with music. I would say that the influences on music were a lot greater than his influences on movies, based on kind of what we've talked about in these B-list movies. But we talk about music and we're talking about Ozzy Osbourne and Jim Morrison and John Lennon. And I mean, that's a hell of a better list than whatever it was that I said that Tom Sizemore was in.
So then you question, well, how evil, how bad was this guy really?
But it's funny you should mention, because you know his nickname was
the Beast.
The most wicked man, wasn't it?
Oh.
The most wicked man by I believe that's what he was referred to in England. It's the most wicked man, which is hilarious, man, because this guy was the most wicked man. Like, there were so many worse people.
Yeah,
like,
no, it seemed like, I mean, if his own self-indulgences were what was wicked about him, then okay, but he didn't, to my knowledge, kill anybody or do anything to hurt anybody. So, and
it also seemed like his followers were very willing. It seemed like his whole path was surrounded by willing individuals. He didn't force people. He didn't, I don't even feel like he really connived or manipulated. I feel like he was just kind of charismatic and people liked what he was putting down. I mean, That's what it seemed like to me.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because when going back to the lawsuit that he lost and was virtually broke and without any assets or places to be or anybody in his life, lo and behold, a woman that he's never met before says, I've read all your stuff. I love everything about you. I want a baby.
Let's make a baby.
Let's make a baby. And he's like, okay, stranger who I've never met, I'll go with you because I've got nothing else. And what ended up happening is he ended up having a child with this woman. She helped him through all of his withdrawals and all the drug issues that he was having, and tried to get him back in the straight and narrow again. And surprisingly, after all of that, and having, I believe, 2 children, I think the first one may have died early, and had a second children. And he admitted, after all of the things that he had done in his life, the true path to to joy is through
Family.
family. Yeah.
Family.
And that's, big old end around back to the beginning again. So, everything that he did and all that he did or did not accomplish, he at least in the final moments understood what it was all, what the key to happiness in life is. So
As I was watching, I watched some things about this guy on YouTube, of course, like we are, and I read a bunch of stuff about this guy, kind of preparing for the show and making sure that I was coming into this with some kind of knowledge base more so than I had, and quite honestly, I did learn quite a bit. And as I'm kind of taking this guy in, as I'm taking all of this media in, and I'm just sort of wrapping my head around this guy, it sort of seemed to me like the late 1800s, early 1900s version of like the guys that play like D&D. Like, I don't know, man. I mean, I'm sure there wasn't a lot going on back then. I mean, there wasn't a lot of technology. In some ways, that was probably better, but it seemed to me like, honestly, like the devil never rose. I mean, and honestly, I know that because if you could bring the devil, if you could summon the devil or demons, like, why wouldn't they take that opportunity to make themselves very well known? Why wouldn't they take that opportunity to do something, big? You can't tell me that they're going to release the devil and he's just going to be like, hey guys, like I came for a spot of tea and then I got to get back. I got 18 holes waiting for me in a couple hours. I've got a tea time or whatever. No tea, a lot of tea. I just talked about a lot of tea. Tea time, golf, drinking tea. I don't know. Anyway, I digress. The point is, though, is that like, I'm pretty sure nothing really ever came of the magic because, quite frankly, I'm not sure if that stuff even works or exists in the first place. So I kind of got the impression that it was basically like, and this is sort of where my opinion is a little, I'm not trying to talk poorly of the guy. I wasn't there and I didn't know him, but it kind of just seemed like this overindulgent guy who was into like nerdy shit that I would say is nerdy shit today. For back then, back then it was like anti-Christ cult shit. But it just seemed to me like a bunch of guys that if they had the table with all of the little D&D die-cast figures and stuff like that, they would have been doing that instead.
Yeah, I mean, if they had a Parker Brothers Ouija board and a bunch of other things, and yeah, they probably. You're not wrong. I think that maybe even more so today than back then, it might be considered more acceptable or accepted. I mean, whether it be different forms of religions, Wiccans, all sorts of different things. It seems like virtually everybody just kind of do their own thing. As long as you don't bother me and I don't bother you, so be it. But for whatever reason back then, when he was doing the things that he did, surprisingly not hurting anybody or really causing any, for the most part, except for potentially the housemaid that he slept with when he was younger. But I don't know as if he really caused anybody's that much harm outside of emotional damage from screwing around with him or doing other things. But
I was going to say I did see or read in a couple of spots that basically any woman that came in contact with this guy, pretty much he ruined their lives. Like,
oh yeah, no,
like he was a woman destroyer. I mean, as far as probably diseases, emotional stress and turmoil, probably, like I said, with the diseases, the physical. I mean, he was just the destroyer of women. But
he didn't seem to be that. I mean, he wasn't a gorgeous looking man, we'll put it that way. So, I mean, it's not like they didn't realize what they were getting into with him. He was open about most of the things that he discussed and talked about. So they all felt like, or it seemed to me like they were all willing participants in it, and ended up falling short of what he wanted them to be or what they thought the relationship would be, and therefore ended up ruining their lives. Some of which were, I think one of his wives was a heavy drinker, and he ended up putting her like in some asylum or something because she was drinking herself to death. But
which is almost funny because with his philosophy of indulgence, I mean, you'd almost think that he would be, if anything, an enabler. And but But then again, she probably was a pain in the ass at that point in time, and he needed to get her out of the way. So, I mean, let's be real.
Very
Not to
possible.
mention the fact that this guy's life is all about some rich people shit. Because, quite frankly, like if this guy was poor, man, he would have been like burned at the stake. Like let's be real about that as well. I mean, throughout time, rich people have always had more of a chance to be eccentric and accepted over people without, you know.
Right.
So I think that played a huge part in it as well. And I was also going to finish up my thoughts on this with kind of hitting where you were talking about the family thing. I think it's because the guy never really gave a shit about anybody. So I feel like when he had kids and he kind of was like dying himself and reflecting, and I feel like he was kind of like, hey, you know, there's more to life. Like, look at this child that I had. Look at this child growing, which is an incredible experience for any father or any parent that is interested in being a parent. But I mean, I feel like that was kind of a natural epiphany living the life that he did. And that's why I think that, you know, it's all about balance. Because I mean, I'm going to tell you right now that anybody that's a fantastic parent, you know, from especially if they are a younger age and they just continue to do that and they're just a fantastic parent ever, I think that they would also at the end say, hey, I wish I had done a few things for me, you know?
Right.
So it's like there's like that balance. So I mean, since he was the opposite and he always did for him, I think that he had this huge epiphany at the end in the other direction, because, you know, life is all about balance. And that's what I'm trying to get at, is that, like, yes, you know, that is an amazing thing, being a parent and being a family person, and life is all about family, but it's not all about family, you know?
Sure. And he wasn't ready at a certain point in time either, because he had children with other women, and he put them up boarding houses and, you know, passed them off as anything but his own. So the fact that at some point in time in his life, when quite frankly all his money ran up, when the golden goose was dried up and he didn't really know where he was going next, and this woman took him in and helped him, that was kind of that switch that was flipped within him, that, look, I've done all this up to this point. There's been some good and bad, but I think I kind of like the way that this trajectory is going. And as he spent more time with them and focused more on family life versus his own desires, he found that was where his true joy lied. And that was pretty cool, or lay, I should say, or whatever. He did a lot of laying, but
so I guess the moral of this story is that when you're out of hooker and cocaine money, hanging out with the kids isn't so bad.
Steven sees a figure crawling in the night. Liza's eyes adjust in the pale moonlight. Jake's camera is rolling steady in the cold. Psycho Pinion is hunting for a story to be told. Through the fog we run.